In the 15 years between 1990 and 2005, the world economy grew at a spectacular rate. China, India, and Brazil emerged as economic world powers and as strategic players of enormous importance. The rich got spectacularly richer, and quite surprisingly and quite remarkably, a number of the poor got less poor and less hungry. Almost 500 million people during that period emerged from the most abject poverty to a point where they had marginally enough to eat and better access to education, to clean water, and to shelter. And then came 2006. In 2006, a savage drought hit Australia, and Australia's production of wheat collapsed, and that, along with events in other parts of the world, drove up food prices. You may have remembered the corn riots in Mexico and food and bread riots across Asia and Africa. But 2006 turned out it wasn't just an unusual year. The same thing happened again the next year, except it wasn't Australia. And then again the next year, and this past summer it was the United States. The US Midwest suddenly caught again in Dust Bowl conditions that have driven up food prices globally. In fact, on an almost continuous basis since 2006, food prices have been higher than expected, partly because more people have the resources to buy meat, and that's placed stress on the system, but largely because of what the changing climate is doing to our capacity to produce food. Historically, we can look at the consequences of the fact that we're at 7 billion now and we'll be at 9 billion people soon and say we're going to need to produce a lot more food, probably, according to UN projections, 50% more food. And ordinarily what we would do would be to use more land. And a consequence of that is that 80% of tropical deforestation is driven by agriculture. Use more water. 85% of human water use now is connected in some way with agriculture, and almost all of our food is dependent on irrigation. More chemicals. But we're already in the situation where chemical use causes dead zones in coastal areas around the world when nutrients run off, and where you cannot find a human being on the face of the earth whose tissues do not include residues of pesticides. And of course, in addition to land, water, chemicals, we've added energy to produce more food. And in fact, because of deforestation and energy use and chemical use, agriculture is the source of about 24% of greenhouse gas emissions worldwide. For people standing in the back, there are lots of seats down front. I'll only embarrass you a little bit as you come down and find a seat. This is an interesting conundrum in a warming world, right? We are experiencing the beginning of the era of flood, drought, fire, and famine as a consequence of global climate change. I've worked on this issue for 30 years. And everything that's happening now is demonstrating that what we previously thought were projections of the worst imaginable case is now business as usual. The things that are happening are not what was supposed to happen. It's the worst that could possibly happen, and we may be exceeding that case. So we will discover over the next 5 years more and more compelling reasons why we would want to emit fewer greenhouse gases. And we're going to have compelling reasons why we want to increase food production and have to deal with the droughts that are the consequence of warming. So there is this very troubling crack-up coming where our demand to reduce emissions, our need to adapt to a changing climate, and our need to produce more food all come together. I don't see that as a technological problem. I actually think we have all the technology we need to deal with those issues. There will be technological breakthroughs. Students in this room will probably generate some of them, but our problem is not primarily technological. It's certainly not economic, because it would simply be cheaper to deal with these issues by reducing emissions and adapting our economy. Interestingly, even the extraordinarily conservative International Energy Agency now takes the view that it would be cheaper not to warm the climate and to change the economy than to go forth as we have. It is a political problem, but the political problem is really just a symptom, right? We just went through 3 presidential debates for the first time in 30 years. They didn't mention climate change. It's not that they didn't know about it. But I actually think it's a cultural problem, particularly in the United States, particularly in the country that has the greatest capacity to take action and is doing almost the least among any advanced country in the world. It is cultural. It is about what we value. It is about what we believe. It is about how we perceive. It is about what we expect. It's a problem not for scientists, it's a problem for the humanities, for the arts, for the communicators, for the portrayers, for the people who help us understand what ideas and values are important. And what place in the world should be the best possible place to mix those things up and find imaginative paths forward? I just can't imagine where I'd rather be to ask that question than here in this room with you. This place that does not acknowledge boundaries between disciplines, this place that celebrates innovation and challenge, that never listens to authorities telling them what the limits are. That's what today is about. Can we envision a future where, if you're part of the Hampshire community, you experience a culture of sustainability? Whatever passions and ideas and experiences and skills you bring with you, you experience a community living the way we can survive in the future. Can we connect that with our broader community in the valley here? Can we live here as we hope the world can live? Artists, historians, scientists, activists experimenting with the campus and a curriculum to create a better model for an era that will be dominated by the crisis of rapid warming. Well, you know what my answer is. That's why I'm here. It's why it's so much fun. It's why you're so exciting. It's why we're doing what we're doing today. And I think food is a great place to start. First of all, food is an everyday necessity. It's something we produce together. We share together. It is something that we can understand together. It's something that has always reflected and defined culture. It's something that matters to every one of us. And we're betting, Beth Hooker and I, subversively, that the way to all your hearts is through your stomachs. So we're trying to start this thinking about curriculum and operation and culture at Hampshire with food. And the people sitting to my left, to whom I am deeply grateful for joining us, are going to help us think how we can use this valley and this fabulous 850-acre campus and all the skills we have present to begin to model a totally different approach. My only request to each of you is think big. Don't let us get off not really imagining what we could do because of what Hampshire is. Okay? So I want to introduce Beth Hooker, who is our sustainability coordinator. Beth is going to kick off the afternoon and then introduce Howard Wine. Beth?